Hello, and welcome to our Catchpoint Tracing demo. Tracing is an end-to-end monitoring solution designed for distributed applications running in containerized microservice-based architectures. It allows you to understand the behavior of your applications across the multiple services and associated resources that it interacts with. So you'll be able to get full visibility into every interaction that your application has, regardless of whether you're testing from Catchpoint or not. It's full transparency into the topology of your application. So let's take a look at how this can be leveraged. Here we're looking at a test that resulted in a failure from Catchpoint. In this case, we're seeing an internal server error. As I scroll down, we can see all of the individual steps that happened within our test. So we had an initial page that loaded successfully, but then when I look at page 2, we do see that there is an error. That error resulted in a 500 response code, and it was aligned to this to-dos/add resource. Now that's really helpful, as that helps us to understand what the impact was to our users and at which step in a particular business process we encountered a failure. But what it doesn't do is help us understand what was happening behind the scenes and really what was the root cause of that error. That's where tracing becomes extremely powerful. So by clicking back to our first screen, we've added a new capability right from the record screen that allows us to view the trace of that session. So now we are able to see our trace map. And here I can view all the interactions that the downstream application has with any third-party services. So for example, if there's a database, I'll be able to see that. If there are cache servers, I'll be able to see that. And I can see which one of these interactions resulted in an error. We know that the first step we were able to run successfully, but then the second step is where we resulted in that unauthorized access. So by clicking on any particular interaction, it will show us the trace chart as well as a summary of what that request looked like and the response that returned back. So we know that we had a 500 response code requesting to-dos.add. However, if we look at the second step, we can see that the failure really occurred accessing this to-do service. So by clicking here, I can now see the actual response that we're getting back, in this case, a network unreachable exception. Now, what if we actually wanted to see the line of code that contributed to that failure? And this can be really powerful, especially for API tests. Now, by clicking on our service, we can see all of the traces that were captured associated to that service. So I can click through each one of them. But on one of those traces, we did have a failure. So now I have the ability to look at all of the individual methods that were being called as part of that service. We have a feature within tracing called time travel debugging that allows us to go back in time and jump into the code and essentially step through line by line all of the code that was executed as part of that method or that request. And I can step through to see where the exception actually happened. So really powerful for truly understanding the root cause of an issue. Now, in this example, we were looking at a failure, right? And certainly tracing for one of its use cases can be leveraged to identify the cause of a failure. But there might be other use cases here where the page loads successfully. However, the performance is slow or there's degradation in that performance. So tracing could also be used to identify those types of problems as well. So let's imagine that we had identified this particular database query as being slow. So by clicking on that trace, I can now look at the methods and the calls that were being made to our database and not only see the response time for each one of those traces, but I can also see the select statement that was being used to query the data from that database. So no matter where the failure or the degradation occurs within that page, we're going to be able to trace it back through the services and publicize that so everyone in the key stakeholders can action it. I hope this session was valuable. Appreciate you watching. For additional information about Catchpoint Tracing or any of our other solutions, please visit our website, www.catchpoint.com, and I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.